In this interview series, Rick Stiggins, founder and president of the Assessment Training Institute and Classroom Assessment Authority, promotes the effective use of formative assessment to support student learning success. He does so by answering a series of 11 questions posed to him by the Alberta Assessment Consortium. What are good first steps for teachers who want to improve formative assessment practice?
Well, to begin with, in a very general sense, the first step would be to find a way to engage in a high-quality professional development program built around the principles of effective formative assessment. And we've established that means do everything you can to learn to develop high-quality assessments, proper methods, high-quality ingredients, bias control, effective communication, and then in addition to that, learn how to use the assessment process effectively to support student learning. But within that, there's an overall orientation that I want to call to your attention and describe for you that has to do with the effective use of assessment to support student learning that engages students as partners in the assessment process. And it's best described, I think, in my colleague Jan Chapuis's book, 7 Strategies of Assessment for Learning, where what happens is our orientation to students is to keep them constantly informed through classroom assessment and their self-assessment. That is the entire process of assessment for learning playing out like this. We want them always to know, where am I going? What learning targets am I aspiring to learning? Secondly, we want them to know where they are now in relation to that definition of success. And then third, we want them to address the question, how can I close the gap between the two? Where am I going? Where am I now? How can I close the gap between the two? Notice where the locus of control resides there. It's with the learner. Now, it turns out that what Jan has articulated is some very specific ways to do those things. When we want kids to know where am I going, we need to provide them with a clear statement, student-friendly version of a statement of the learning target that they're aspiring to in terms that they can understand. They won't be able to hit the target, but they may well be able to understand what it is we're going for. And then secondly, provide them with examples and models so that they can see what their work will look like as it evolves from where they are now to success, so that at any point in time they can compare that work to that continuum and know and see the progress that they've made. That's a huge motivational plus. To help them know where am I now, we need to give them regular access to descriptive feedback. That is feedback that describes their work in terms of its specific and important characteristics and doesn't merely judge it. In order to help along the way for them to know where they are now, we want to teach students the skills of self-assessment so that they can become partners with their teacher in setting goals for what comes next in their learning as they progress towards success. And then, to help them close the gap between the two, we need to design lessons that focus on key attributes of good performance so students can understand those characteristics, and then teach them how to evaluate their work and work on focused revision in terms of those keys to success. And then finally engage students in a constant self-reflection where they keep track of and talk with others about changes in their own achievement, in their own learning. Now look, there's a lot to be learned in there. But it's the strategy of helping kids know where they're going, where they are now, and how to be a partner in closing the gap. That is the sort of philosophical orientation that is critical here. And then it's possible to start quickly I often recommend to teachers, if you need to start someplace, just start by providing students with student-friendly versions of the learning target from the beginning of the learning and watch what happens. It's a confidence builder, because what that sets them up to be able to do is to watch themselves coming closer and closer. And these are the emotional dynamics of success that we want to develop in students. All students, not just some of them. So a good place to start is find and engage in professional development around this set of ideas. But at least to begin with, start with those student-friendly targets and just watch what happens to students. I've been in classrooms where teachers are doing this, and I can walk up to any student and say, what are you doing? They say, well, here's where I'm headed, but look, here's where I am now, and here's what I'm doing. And they just begin to adopt the language. They begin to go on internal control. They begin to have that sense of efficacy that's so important to be confident, competent learners. You know, and before I close out on this one, the other thing I'd say is just a comment to school leaders, and that is, do whatever you can to get, as a first step for you, to get teachers the opportunity to learn. Build balanced assessment systems in which classroom assessment plays a pivotal role, and get people the opportunity to learn.